Hey there, a little more bad news. This compressor has died again. I do not recommend you buy this compressor. This is the Ingersoll Rand 80-gallon, 2-stage, 5-horsepower compressor. I bought it like a year and a half ago, and I've already gone through 2 motors. And I don't use this really heavy. I use this at home for like 1 day a week. I've sprayed a lot of primer on my car. I use air tools, but nothing like continuous duty. Nothing at all taxing on this. The first motor blew up and it was catastrophic. I mean, luckily this place didn't catch on fire. I normally park my car right next to this with a car cover on it, and there were literally flames shooting out of the motor. So that could have been bad. I never leave the switch on overnight. So I was luckily here when the compressor wouldn't start and fire started shooting out. So that was one crisis averted. That was under warranty. Ingersoll Rand came out and replaced the motor. It took like a week. You know, the compressor was down for about a week. They replaced the motor, and then 6 months later, it's died again. When the technician came out, he double-checked the installation. You know, there's a 200 amp service panel from the street right behind here, and then a 50 amp breaker through this box with some heavy gauge wire. I can't remember if it's 6 gauge or 8 gauge, but whatever it is, it's bigger than what's in the motor. He agreed it was a good installation. He basically said that these motors have been failing a lot. The second time the motor blew up, I called Ingersoll Rand back and said, hey, can you come out and fix it again? And they said, sorry, it's out of warranty. It's a 1-year warranty. And it had been less than 6 months. So I said, can you please just, take a look at this replacement motor? I think it might be defective. Fire didn't shoot out of it this time, but I was really careful with it. Is there something you can do? Maybe it was installed incorrectly. They said, yes, we can have someone come out, but it's going to charge like an $80 service fee or whatever it was. I went through a lot of circles, tried to speak to managers, and they actually wouldn't even call me back. Then I went to the Better Business Bureau and left a complaint. They didn't return a response on that either. So Ingersoll Rand, if anyone knows anyone that works in Ingersoll Rand, please forward this video to them. I'm pretty disappointed. So now the warranty's over. I don't really buy extended warranties, so I have to try to fix this thing one way or the other. I'm going to start by checking some things inside the motor and see if I can fix it. If not, it's time to replace it again. Even though the power is disconnected here, this is a 240 volt machine. These capacitors are big and they can still store a lot of power. So I'm going to discharge these capacitors before I take this cover off and potentially get shocked. No sparks or anything on this. So this has been, powered off for a few days. No electricity left in that one. Yep, those are grounded out. So power's been completely disabled. Let's see if we can get this end cap off. So the condition of the windings doesn't look terribly bad. Let me see if I can show you. There is a little bit of dust inside. I have been trying to blow dust out of this after the first motor failed. Doesn't look particularly bad inside. The bearing feels fine. I think the issue has to do with this clutch assembly. This is a centrifugal clutch that engages the main windings after the motor gets started. This is the spring mechanism that's going to flip open, and it's going to pull these contacts right here. Pull or push, I'm not sure yet, but there are some contacts there, and I'm going to try to clean those and see if that fixes my problem. Just have a little bit of 400 grit paper, double-sided here. So I'm just going to run it inside these contacts and see if I can rejuvenate them somehow. Okay, I've put everything together except for the capacitors are loose and the cover plate on this electrical stuff is not present. I want to be able to look inside there and see the clutch moving if it does do anything at all. So I'm going to apply some power to it and see what happens. Nope. I can reach my hand back here and make sure that the motor is turning just fine. And sometimes if I get it into a new position, it'll sometimes start. But not today. Now the motor turned just a little bit that time, but it just doesn't seem to have the oomph to start up. So either the windings are bad or one of these capacitors. I think one's a run capacitor, one's a startup capacitor, and that gives it a little bit of boost, I think. There's now about 125 pounds in the tank, so let's see how well it starts with high pressure. It's good. That's about 165 or 170. I think it's about 170. So I think it works. Put the guard back on now, and I have been monitoring this belt just to make sure it's not slipping or glazing. I got it much looser than they did. That probably is one of the reasons why the motor failed so quickly. I think the belt was too tight. Okay, so what's done is done. Hopefully this motor will last longer than the last two. I'm not sure. This came from eBay, but it's a compressor store, and I communicated with them. They seem to think this would be a good replacement motor. It actually bolted right in, no modifications, cutting. The only thing I had to do is snip some of the wires off, where instead of plugging into the motor, it actually has to twist tie. So I didn't tighten my belt nearly as tight as Ingersoll Rand did. And I have a feeling that that might be the cause of the motor failure. Because when the motor would run, it would run fine. It just had trouble getting started. And like I showed you, there's two different windings. One's for startup, one's for running, and two different capacitors. One's for startup, one's for running. This motor had a really hard time getting started. I have a feeling they might have messed up on the installation of the second motor. So I'm just going to keep my eye on the belt, make sure it's not slipping or glazing or anything, but I think this motor is going to do a little better.